Hey new students, my name is Darby Bubp. I'm a junior in the college and I'm your new What'sAHoya director. We've been getting a few questions from some of you who are a little bit confused about the What'sAHoya process, so I'm just going to go through and answer some of those questions and try to make things a little bit clearer. Alright, the housing lottery. So the housing lottery is the process through which you select your housing for the next year. So it's split up into two different phases, phase 1 and phase 2. If you have enough housing points to get into phase 1, then you would be selecting first, and you would be entering in a group of 4, and you would have your choice between apartment style dorms, which means that you would have your own kitchen and your own bathroom, and you wouldn't need to get the Georgetown meal plan. The alternate phase, phase 2, that's for people with a little bit less housing points, and instead of entering in a group of 4, you'd be entering in a group of 2, and then you would be selecting between suite style dorms, which means that you would just have your room where you can sleep and do your homework, but then you wouldn't have your own kitchen, and sometimes you wouldn't have your own restroom. Because of that, you would also need to get a meal plan through Georgetown. A lot of people really push to try to get into phase 1 because you have an earlier pick time, which means you have more options, more of a selection, and you typically would be placed in one of the newer dorms with better resources, and you would have an apartment, which is pretty nice. Alright, so you get a certain number of housing points based off of what grade you're going into. So if you are currently a first year at Georgetown, then you'd be entering into the housing lottery as a rising sophomore, meaning that you would start with 2 housing points, and then you would get 0.1 housing points for every 3 tokens that you would get through What'sAHoya, which is a little bit of a confusing system, and we can break that down a little bit later in this video. But basically, if you complete everything that you possibly could through What'sAHoya, then you'll have 0.3 housing points, meaning that you'll be at a 2.3. So when you try to enter into phase 1 of the housing lottery, the 4 people that are entering together, the average between all 4 of those roommates would be taken, and there's a certain cutoff point. So if you have above that cutoff point, then you'll get into phase 1, and if not, then you'll have to go into phase 2. So you'll have to break your group of 4 into 2 different doubles. So typically, the cutoff point for phase 1 is usually a 2.3, meaning that phase 1 will be filled with rising seniors, rising juniors, and then all of the rising sophomores who have an average of 2.3 between all 4 of the roommates, meaning that all 4 of the roommates completed everything they needed to complete through What'sAHoya. Alright, so now we're going to walk through the structure of What'sAHoya. This is a little bit confusing, so I've drawn you this beautiful diagram here to help us out. Okay, so we have 3 broad issue areas into which our content is divided. So we have health and wellness, inclusive community building, and professional development. So within each of these individual issue areas, there is 1 mandatory introductory module that will grant you 1 token, and then we have a variety of other optional modules, for the most part, each of which would grant you 1 token. So to get 0.1 housing points from any given issue area, you have to complete 3 tokens within that issue area. So to kind of recall from one of our past videos, you can get a max of 0.3 housing points by participating in What'sAHoya, meaning that to get your full 0.3 housing points, you would have to get 0.1 housing points from each of these 3 issue areas. So for example, if we're looking at inclusive community building, you could get 1 token from completing the mandatory intro module. Then you could complete 2 additional modules, each of which would grant you 1 token, and then you would have your total 1, 2, 3 tokens, which would give you 0.1 housing points. Now, sadly, you can't mix and match between issue areas, meaning that you couldn't complete your mandatory intro module, 1 additional inclusive community building module, 1 module from professional development. Sadly, if you had this set up, you wouldn't be getting any additional housing points because you can't mix and match between inclusive community building and professional development. Now, that's not to say that you necessarily have to do 3 modules to get 3 tokens, because we sometimes offer some special cases where you could get 2 tokens from completing 1 additional module. So for example, within health and wellness, if you do the mandatory intro module giving you 1 token, and then you do the core cornerstone program, which grants you 2 tokens, then you would be completely done with health and wellness because you would already have your 3 tokens, so you would get your 0.1 housing points. So just a quick summary, I know this was kind of a lot of information, but you can't mix and match your tokens between issue areas. 3 tokens in one given issue area gives you 0.1 housing points, and by completing all 3 of the issue areas, you can get a max of 0.3 housing points, meaning that after this year, you'll be entering the housing lottery as a rising sophomore with 2.3 housing points, which is the maximum amount of housing points a rising sophomore can have. All right, I hope this was helpful. If you have any more questions for us, please either comment on this video or shoot us a message through Canvas or over email. Awesome, have a great rest of your semester. Hoya Saxa, I'll talk to you later. Bye.